Hey, what's going on, everybody? Hope this finds you well. We all just got finished watching the PS5 reveal, and of course, we already knew about the Xbox Series X as that was revealed a little earlier. So with both of the heavy hitters as far as consoles showing what they have on the horizon coming this holiday 2020, if you're a Stadia player like myself, or maybe someone who's just curious with the service, you might be wondering, okay, well, what's Stadia's answer going to be to these next generation consoles? So let's talk about it. Okay, so everything here forward is things that I believe Google should do regarding the Stadia service to compete with the upcoming PS5 and Xbox Series X. Now, what I said in a video, maybe a little while ago, I said that this new console refresh is actually a blessing in disguise for Google, because Stadia came into the game so late, it was going to be hard for them to compete game-wise with consoles that was already, well into their life cycle. And that means not only do they already have a lot of games, developers have already learned the ins and outs of these consoles, and they know how to get the most power out of them, and they also know how to develop for them the most efficiently. So when you bring another system or another service, another architecture into the mix, something that developers really haven't seen, then it automatically becomes harder for them to develop for it. And then it also makes them wonder, well, why are we going to expend the extra manpower? Why are we going to spend the extra hours to develop for something that is new to the table, which means not a lot of people are going to have it, when we could use all that extra manpower, those extra hours, to really get the most out of things we already know are in everybody's household, and it's probably going to be the bulk of our sales anyway. So now, with new consoles coming out, developers are going to have to go back pretty much to square one and start that whole life cycle again. Start that whole learning process when it comes to the PS5 and the new Xbox. And since the Stadia Generation 2 upgrade is not going to be much different than Stadia Generation 1, the archetypes will pretty much be the exact same, except for we'll have, obviously better virtualized hardware. But the actual infrastructure of it will be the same, so I don't see the development process actually changing much with the new generation. So since the archetype really isn't going to change from Generation 1 to Generation 2, developers kind of come in with a big head start over PlayStation 5 or Xbox Series X, which both are launching two different infrastructures, two different archetypes for their consoles. So it's going to take a little bit of time for devs to really pull everything out of them that they want to get out of them. Also, now that everybody's hitting the table at the same time, it makes it a lot easier for Stadia to get in with all the new games that's coming up. So when games release on other consoles, hopefully they'll release on Stadia at the same time. So that way, they get more of a fighting chance. It's hard to sell a game on a console, it's hard to sell a game, period, when you come late to the party. Like the Nintendo Switch had this issue. They would release a lot of games on the PlayStation and then the Xbox, and then months later it would come to the Switch. Well, unless you only have a Switch, you're probably not going to buy that game on the Switch. And that was something that Stadia was really suffering with throughout its entire about 8 months right now of its life, is that it was always late to the party. Every new game we got on Stadia had already been out on PC for maybe a couple of years, or it already had launched on consoles, and that player base had already pretty much solidified itself as these are the people who have the game, and it's going to be hard to resell that late down the line. So one of the strategies that I see that Google should actually implement regarding the Stadia service is make sure, even if they have to spend extra money to make sure or to incentivize devs to actually do this, is crossplay. You need crossplay on all games that you're releasing on your service. You need to be able to play with the PlayStation base. You need to be able to play with the Xbox base, even the PC base. I don't see Stadia really competing much with the PC base, but I do see it competing more so with consoles. And the reason for that is everybody knows Google apparently does not market Stadia. I never see Stadia commercials. I don't really see much regarding Stadia at all. And I don't understand what why they do that, it really makes it hard, I guess, to sell the service as a whole when you don't see much about it. You see other companies using the marketing as one of their most heavily invested parts, and Apple is a prime example. Especially when they were putting out the Beats headphones. I don't believe they're called Beats anymore, but I believe it was up to 70% of the budget for Beats was purely marketing, just to get it out there, get it in famous people's hands and athletes' hands, things like that. Just always showing that product with top tier echelon athletes, top tier actors, top tier designers, people like that, so that it builds that brand, showing that this is what the quote unquote people who made it, or the people who were like really important, this is what they use. This is how they get their work done. These big movie developers, they use this product to make these great things happen on screen, and it can only be made with this. That's why they always use this, that type of thing. So the reason why I say they should make it crossplay is because that part can be a stealth marketing advantage. And by stealth marketing, I mean you're marketing through people who are using the service, just playing with their friends, talking about the service. It's hard to get people, and I have only one of my friends, Roger, who's part of the channel, actually has the Stadia service, and I would say kind of actively uses it, I probably play Stadia a lot more than him, and I believe Terry plays a little bit, but not much. So I'm probably the Stadia guy of the channel. But with that being said, I always tell them, like, especially when it comes to downloads and things like that, like how much better it is that you don't have to do that stuff, that the game's always ready. Whenever you buy it, you can play it immediately. But it's hard to get people to really feel like that's an advantage. They're always looking at the service like it's less than the console experience. Like, I guess you're not waiting on that, but I rather play on console because it's smoother, or it's a better experience. When I'm actually playing, there's a bigger player base, things like that, and that kind of skews people away from trying the service. So if you have crossplay, one, you don't have to worry about the player base issue, and two, when all these updates are happening, when games are pushing out, like Call of Duty pushing out 100 gigabit updates, it's like, oh, hey guys, let's go play some Warzone. And it's like, oh, all right. Say I hop on Stadia, and then boom, I'm just in the game. I'm like, hey, what y'all? Oh yeah, we got an update. I was like, oh, all right, well, I guess just jump in the party, after the update stops or whatever. So it's little things like that, just having those interactions, and then you constantly stay, especially for like Destiny. Say you're raiding, because there's crossplay now, so we're raiding on multiple consoles, plus Stadia, maybe plus PC or whatever, and you're like, wow, like such and such, oh, he always plays on Stadia. He's never had any issues, like he never got kicked, he never's complaining about lag, like we don't have any issues playing with them, and just like, dang, I guess Stadia does work pretty well. And combine that with Google offering these 1 to 2 months free, for people to try out the service. Just being able to see someone utilize the service and see what their game experience is like firsthand, that will actually probably incentivize people to try out the service, especially when they get tired of dealing with storage issues, when they get tired of always having to update these games. And like I said, some of these games have huge updates to them. And also, even when you purchase a game, you still have to download it. You still have to install it. Of course, speaking digitally, you still have to install the physical disc as well. But with the new SSD on the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, I don't see disc installs actually taking long at all. But from the downloads perspective, that's not going to change much. So those things right there can kind of really start to like sneakily drive that convenience factor home, where people might want to say, you know what, I'll try that out. The other part of that is actually still marketing, but like I said earlier, you never really see much of the Google Stadia. They need to change that. They really need to put more into marketing, more money into marketing, getting it into, now that we have sports starting to slowly come back, getting commercials in the middle of sports games, getting ads in the middle of sports games. It should be a lot more ads. Well, it could be ads on YouTube. I don't have the free version of YouTube, so I don't see ads. But obviously, YouTube being a Google service, push that. Make sure you get ads on there. If there's any way you can get ads on services like Twitch, things like that, you need to be able to reach out and let people see, just see the brand. Let people know that even exists. And they really need to start getting the controllers and stuff, because there's no really other hardware besides the Chromecast Ultra, which I don't see people really associating that with Stadia, because the Chromecast have been out well before the service. But the controller, that is something you can focus on. That'll be just Stadia. You see it, you're like, oh, that's that Google Stadia service. Get those in stores. Stop just selling that through the Play Store. That is the worst idea ever. Why would you only sell it through the Play Store? Get the physical controller out at GameStop. Get it out at Walmart. Get it at Targets, Best Buy, places like that where people go to buy games. So even if they're not going there to buy the controller, say they're going there to buy something for the PlayStation, they're like, oh, what's that? What is that? Google Stadia? What's Google Stadia? What's that section? Marketing. You just at least get the idea out there. Let people know it exists. So please move the controller from just the Play Store. No one is going to the Google Play Store just to go to the Google Play Store, unless you already know about Google services and you're going there to buy a specific product or service from the Play Store. So yeah, get it in physical stores. Now that we talked about marketing and all that type of stuff, and I guess quote unquote stealth marketing strategies to try to get Stadia out there, the next thing we'll talk about is graphics. I feel like that the next generation of Stadia, of course, is still going to support 4K because the first generation did. They might delve a little into 8K. I don't know, because 4K was already really data intensive. 8K obviously is going to be even worse. So I would say even when they upgrade their infrastructure so that we can get this Generation 2 Stadia service, they should focus more on frame rate than 8K resolution. And even if it's just sticking to 4K and maybe increasing the frame rate, especially on heavy hitter titles like Destiny, increase it to 60 frames per second. Or, if you want to rock 1080p, then it's like, okay, well, you can get 144 frames per second obviously on games that we can make that happen. And that shouldn't be an issue, especially with the Generation 2 of hardware coming up. So that should be their focus. Don't focus on 8K. There's a lot of people who can't even play in 4K because they just don't have the internet speed to support it. So at least with the resolution of 1080p, I believe you only need about a 10 to 15 megabit download in order to play in the 1080p 60 frames per second. So if we can actually boost that to about 144, I feel like that will be a really great experience. And it's probably something that the consoles actually aren't focusing on. I do see that they say they're going to support the 4K 120 megahertz TVs. So they might be shooting for a 1080p 120 frames experience. I believe Xbox says something about that, but I'm not 100% sure. So just kind of uncapping that frames from 60 frames per second, get that more so to the PC side, the more PC experience, to show, like this is superior to consoles because of this. You don't have to compete with the new SSDs and all that type of stuff. They may load a little faster, but you're not doing downloads, you're not doing updates, things like that. You can use that to say, well, we're saving you a ton more time because you can play all the time, whenever you want, immediately. They might beat us in some load times, but that's only seconds, other than a couple hours to download a game. So those ones you can kind of use to offset that. And my last tip, I guess, is what they should do with the Google Stadia service is they need to bring two things on board, if possible. One is definitely possible. I feel like it's more of a stubbornness on their part because they decided to go one way and this other particular product did not support this. But they need to get this on iPhones. Stadia needs to support iOS. I understand, Google and Apple, they might see themselves as rivals, but everyone knows that the iPhone has a huge chunk of the cell phone share in the United States, at least. Probably in the entire world, but at least in the United States. The majority of people have iPhones. It's, even though Android may have I think it has like a 50, even though Android might have like a 50% or maybe almost 60% share. So you would think it's the majority, but that's every Android phone. All different types, all together make up 60. And the other huge part of the pie is the iPhone. The iPhone is built on the same infrastructure, the same iOS, each time. So they need to get started. So they need to get Stadia on that. They need to get it on iOS, get it on the iPad, get it on the iPhone. The reason why it's not on those products right now is because Apple has a dedicated hardware chip in their phones to do the encoding, and it doesn't support VP9, which is what Google chose for Stadia. Stadia uses VP9, so that's why it's not on iOS yet. I know in the future that Stadia is supposed to be using, I believe it's called A1, and Apple does support that. So maybe that's what they're waiting on. They're just going to say, well, maybe when they release Generation 2, they'll also support the A1, and then they'll just be able to bring it to the iPhone and iPad at that time. So hopefully that is in the works, because you're missing out on a huge market share by not bringing it to the iPhone. So that's going to wrap up this little video about where I think Stadia should go. I'm definitely looking forward to whatever Google is going to announce regarding the next generation of Stadia, just to see what they have planned for us, see if any of it kind of lines up to what I think they should do, and maybe they'll surprise me and do something even crazier than what I can imagine. So hopefully we get something from them maybe in the next month or so. They might have just been waiting for both Xbox and PlayStation to kind of show their hands. Then they can kind of see how they want to advertise their next generation against those two consoles, to maybe show, where they can take advantage of maybe a couple weak points, I guess. Nothing's really weak about the new consoles, but maybe weak points in terms of convenience and things like that. So I hope everybody's safe, hope everybody's healthy, staying sane through this whole social distancing period. Hopefully it ends sooner than later. But with that being said, please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content. And I'm out.